Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started on another day. It's a really nice day out there, even though my snow continues to be here. Um, Appreciate everybody putting into the chat. Um, we're going to get started first, but before we do, I wanted to talk about a quick tip for success out of the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Today, I am focused on be proactive. Stephen Covey wrote the book 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, and part of the idea of being proactive that he talks about is be proactive about the type of work you're working on. He has this thing called the time matrix, time management matrix, and the idea behind it is that you have things that are in your life. Let's just say your professional life for the moment. You have things that are in your life that are important and things that are not important. You have things that are urgent and not urgent. And he describes these in 4 different quadrants. So quadrant 1 is it's important and urgent. Think about like a customer calls you, like, hey, I got a fire. You need to help us solve it. It's like, okay, that's important and it's urgent. And then you got not urgent, but important. So that is around strategic thinking. That's quadrant 2. And that's where he says pay attention to. The 2 on the bottom are urgent but not important, and not urgent and not important. So I'll ignore this for a moment. But proactiveness, my tip for you today is make sure you're proactively trying to choose something in your day, every day, a teeny thing, and every week, a little bigger thing that comes from quadrant 2, something that is important but not urgent. It's not the squeaky wheel. It's not demanding your attention. An example could be, calling 5 new people. Calling 5 new people to try to continue to build the relationships that you have with the government or teaming partners or whatever. Calling 5 new people a day, it's important, but it's not urgent, and it can easily get missed. Another example is engaging on LinkedIn outside of my stuff, right? Going and finding the federal buyers who might be posting content on LinkedIn, and for you to go out there and engage by a thumbs up or a comment of value, right? That's quadrant 2. It's important, but not urgent. And so today's tip about be proactive is that. Okay, so we're going to bounce around. I will tell you that I've got my slides a little kind of out of whack. It just is what it is, but we're going to dive into it. And today we're going to be talking about how federal buyers buy what you sell. And this is really important for small businesses to understand. I teach that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. And the idea is government contracting is also a process for the government. The federal agencies follow a really well-defined process. It's one of my favorite reasons for being in the federal market compared to commercial, state, local, or education, is because every single one of them has a different process. There's like 3,000 counties. Imagine trying to sell into the counties, and every single one of them does a little different, and you got to tweak what you're doing. But in the federal market, for the most part, there's one process that they follow, defined in a well set of rules, right? We call it they call it the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation. But basically, it's just a set of rules that guide how the government does things, and there's things in there related to how they buy. And so we want to be diving into that today. That's what I'm going to be looking at with you. So let me pull up some slides. I had this other slide I wanted to share, but I just don't have it. So I'll have to play this a little bit by ear. But let me share this slide deck really quick. Okay, I should be sharing my slide. We're going to be talking about how federal agencies buy. I'm going to break down today's topic into 3 main areas that I really want to drive into. The first thing is to understand the acquisition and procurement process. This is a really important thing. Actually, let me pause. I'd rather take 1 second and do something I should have done ahead of time. But if I can find this one slide, it's one of my favorite slides about the process that happens out there on the federal government. I got this roadmap. Come on. Okay, I don't have that roadmap and it sucks. But let me just move on because I got a day job too. I didn't have this as much, but I'm going to talk about the acquisition procurement process. There is a set of things that they do, and I'll be able to show you a little bit on that. And then I want to talk to you about, if that's the process they follow, who in the federal government is getting engaged at what points. And then the last thing is where federal buyers look for you. And so we'll talk about that. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I'm co-founder of GovCon in a Box. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market after I got out of the Army, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results, and this is what I want for you. As we move forward, make sure that you've subscribed to the newsletter, Government Contracting Success, because I put out a lot of other tips in there. And make sure you're following me on LinkedIn. I know some of you are on Twitter and on YouTube. Come over here to LinkedIn. This is where we can engage with each other as a community. I like the other platforms, but this is the professional networking platform. Speaking of that, this morning I just put out a post, and inside of an hour, we got well over 2,000 people viewing it and a couple hundred people engaging in it. And the post was about, if you would like to connect with other people who are connected to me. I have 36,000 followers, right, in connections. If you'd like to connect with them, come engage. And I want you to connect with them over there, but also in the newsletter is where you're able to find other people who are in the GovCon world and be able to reach out. Hey, I saw you comment on Neil's newsletter, that kind of thing. Tomorrow's training, I just want to give you a quick heads up on that. I put the title here, Stop Hiding for Federal Buyers. And what I mean by this is, if the federal buyers can't find you, then they can't buy from you. And so tomorrow's training, I'm really going to dive into these things you can look at to go, am I hiding from the federal buyers? So we're going to be talking about that. I wanted to congratulate the companies in the 100 Club. These are people with 100 visibility score or federal visibility score. This means how visible are you to federal buyers on a score of 0 to 100. And 120 people are in the 100 Club out of 360,000 small businesses that are registered. Go to govconinabox.com. You can find your company's profile. You'll see a score in the top right-hand corner, and you can click on that score and be able to see detailed steps with videos on what you need to do for your company to get to 100. We provide that for free as a way to just get more people visible to federal buyers. I forgot to take the animation out, but this might be fun. So I want to walk you through, before I get to the federal side of it, I want to get you through understanding how you work with federal buyers from a sales cycle. So we have this thing called shift left. The idea of shifting left is to try to get in there early in a sales cycle. And so the first thing you want to be doing is engaging with your customer. We call this business development, not capture, but business development, where you can talk to them about ideas. An example of an idea is, I was just mentioning to Jay, who might be on here, who does water management type services. And there's a lot of concern that's coming up, and water is a national security issue. I said, team up with an AI company and go back into your customers and just talk to them about this idea of the power of AI to address some of the water needs. And so he can go in and talk about an idea, and you're talking about something very early on in the life cycle. As you come forward, you have the requirement exploration. And what this is where the federal buyer themselves might have an idea. They might be looking at your idea, exploring it, or maybe they're the ones that came up with the idea internally. They're like, we need this kind of activity. And so they're going to explore the requirements and try to go to the internet and research what they're doing. An example, sticking with AI, is AI. How are the federal agencies exploring AI and how it fits into each one of their program offices? Right? Should we use AI? Should we go that path? Think about it from your business perspectives. What you sell? When are they? What are they exploring? Right? What's the next thing that they're going to explore for features that are coming out? And what problems do those features solve? And you get in at this early stage, and this is an informal stage of market research. And then it moves on to formal market research. Formal market research is the sources sought notices and the RFIs that you see come out on SAM or on eBuy or other contract vehicles. And this is where the government enters into a specific tracked market research. Requirement exploration, it's market research, but they're not tracking it in any kind of formal way at all. But here, they do track it. And so if they're doing RFIs, the idea behind an RFI is that request for information. They want to explore their requirements further. That's the idea, is they're looking for information about their needs and their goals, et cetera. That's different than a sources sought. So in SAM, there's sometimes this confusion where they only have a notice type called sources sought. But in reality, they're two different things. An RFI is exploring the requirements for the most part, and a sources sought truly is more exploring the sources that the government can look to buy from. You are the source to the government, right? And so that sources sought is also here in this market research. And this is when they drop it and they're looking for you to respond to an RFI or sources sought. And then from the federal acquisition side and the market or the sales life cycle, it gets into this RFP phase. You no longer can talk to the customer. In fact, one of the people in our community was asking me yesterday, the day before, and they were asking how they can get into the KO because 2 months before the RFP dropped, the contracting officer, the KO, the contracting officer closed conversation. I hate it, and it's wrong, but it's their choice, and so they can do whatever they want. But they closed the door to any more conversations about the RFP. And so when the RFP comes out, that means the RFP phase happens when the RFP drops. And so they're going into exploring that. Really quickly, KO and CO is how we describe contracting officers. If you don't know this, CO in the military, like I was in the Army, is commanding officer. So we say KO, and then in the military and CO somewhere else. RFP phase moves to award and then into execution. So you can see this is part of the sales life cycle and the acquisition life cycle. Again, I described it as informal. I also describe execution as informal because if there's a 5-year contract I wish I won and I didn't and it's awarded, well, that begins my new informal market research and sales activity. So I'm going to be diving into that. I just put down some examples of how you can get engaged. That's not the purpose of today's training, but I did want to just mention you can do in the informal stage white papers, YouTube videos, which I'm a huge fan of because people can consume it in far less time. Engage on LinkedIn, like I said. I'm going to a big conference in March with DOD and a lot of leadership out there. I can go in there and engage. I can hear them discuss their issues or their goals, et cetera. And I can also talk about potential solutions I have. And so you can look at those in the informal stage. And in the formal stage, I describe it as looking at the RFI or sources sought coming out. This is when they determine the set asides they're going to use. Make sure that you're in DSPS because market research is looking into DSPS. I just looked yesterday. I did a video yesterday for NancyCo, and if you're not tracking, you can go to GovConChamber/NancyCo, GovConChamber.com. But inside of the strategic plan that one of the DoD agencies has is they're like, look for small businesses in DSPS. This is why you hear me talk about it a lot. Well, that's what happens during market research. And you can just see here, I talk about, if you look at the acquisition life cycle, you're looking at the further left in the process, the closer to the idea phase you get, the stronger likelihood that you can influence the entire opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to move past that one in a second because what I really want to do is show a slide, but I can do this slide instead because this slide also shows some of the activity that happens. In here, the purpose of this slide is to show you who's buying and how many people are buying. In the DoD alone, there's this, across the government, there's this job category called acquisition professionals, right? And so in the DoD or the acquisition workforce, they have 185,000 plus acquisition workforce related people. These are contracting officers, contract specialists, et cetera. So people in that acquisition side. But then there's all these other people within an agency and within the DoD and civilian agencies that are supporting it. They call them other functional areas, right? You can see it here. Personnel who are outside the traditional acquisition workforce, but they're still responsible for critical elements of that acquisition process. They're doing key things like developing the requirements, developing the budget, and managing financial resources. So you can think about this on the people who are executing the existing contracts. This is the program office. These are also buyers that are out there. And so when you look at the sales life cycle that I did in the acquisition life cycle around informal market research, formal market research, and then RFP phase, it's the same thing here. Acquisitions cut across multiple function areas, beginning with planning and requirements, what I call the idea phase, and they're starting to look at it. There's cost estimation, right? This is a huge thing where they do something called an independent government cost estimate, and the whole point of that is they're looking at that going, well, what do I think this would cost? Let me go out and do some basic research on maybe what we paid for before for the same services or products, et cetera. They're doing whatever activity they do to have an estimate of what it would cost. And then when they reach out, sometimes they reach out in sources sought and say, can you give us a ROM, a rough order of magnitude on the cost for this work that we want done? And so as they do that, you want to be tracking on that as well to look at that and say, can we influence the cost estimation? And the reason you want to do business development in particular and then capture early on, and you can watch previous videos I've done the last 2 days on business development and capture, but the idea is to get in there and start getting them to think about costs and how, just on the cost estimation, on the cost and how much it will actually cost. Here's a thing that I kind of am shaping, and I'll try to do some training on this. There's LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable type way of buying. So the government looks at things and goes, well, we're just going to look at the lowest price technically acceptable. And what I like to do, and what I'm going to try to teach people a process on doing this yourselves, is this ability to go in and influence what the technically acceptable acceptability is, right? If you think about lowest price technical acceptable, well, it's hard for me to influence lowest price. And so what I need to do is to try to influence technically acceptable. And technically acceptable goes back into this idea of who's buying at what stage. If I'm getting to the contracting officer and the closer to the RFP dropping, it's going to get a lot harder to influence any of the decisions around what is technically acceptable. But if I come back and I'm talking earlier in the life cycle of the acquisition or buying life cycle or the sales life cycle that we do, if I get earlier in that process, then I can talk to a program office, the different people in there are going to be thinking about this. And I can say, hey, you really need to make sure this thing is happening. So an example I might use is if I have this company called Nancy Co that I started up. And I started on January 1st, just as an example of how, if you follow my process, you can get to $1 million in a year. So I'm going to show that process by getting government contracts or subcontracts that get to that path. I'm going to be selling basically LinkedIn engagement. So I can go in and have conversations with people saying, look, anybody's going to come in here and say they do LinkedIn. Oh, we do social media. So then the lowest price is going to be down there in the $30 an hour. What I want to say is, look, you want to have people who have done a ton of this already themselves. They have verifiable proof. For example, for me, I averaged more than 4 million views in social media, and most of that is here on LinkedIn in 2024. And I did the same thing almost in 23. I would try to influence that and say, hey, you really want people who are going to come in and bid to have this level of proof. And so what I'm trying to do is influence the technical acceptability. When that happens, and it's me and like 3 other companies who do this a lot, then we can, have our prices raised. But when the government thinks technically acceptable is anybody who's got a LinkedIn license can do LinkedIn support for them, well, then it's a commodity, and any the price just drops to the floor. You need to think about this for your own business, right? What are you doing, and what's technically acceptable in there? And I believe every single business, it can be janitorial or construction or IT services, et cetera, you can look at that and go, how can I influence technically acceptable? Anyways, when you understand the buying life cycle of the federal government, and you understand the different functional areas or people who get engaged in that acquisition life cycle, you begin to understand how business development and capture allows you to get in at different stages out there. So hopefully you're tracking on that. Hey, really quick, just want to let you know, we've got virtual networking on Monday, the 13th. So make sure you sign up for that. We've got an add event link. Maybe somebody will put it in the chat for you. Add our training events to your calendar. We use an add event link on there for you to be able to do that. And then right in the middle here, I put our marketplace. We're standing up a new marketplace. We've got so many people who keep reaching out to me and asking, hey, do you know a good lawyer who specializes in government contracting or banking or any of these things? And that's how we decided to focus on people. So we're just bringing them into a marketplace. Right now we got 2, but my plan is just keep adding folks in there. If you know companies that sell specifically to the marketplace and they're good and they should be in our marketplace, let me know and we can follow up. But go check out Marketplace. All right. Let me stop sharing this guy. Hopefully I did stop sharing that. And I want to share a different screen really quick of how federal buyers look for a company like yours. And so hold on 1 second as I just download this and hopefully open it. I just got to open another file and share it. Perfect. So I have this as a handout, and I think I'm sharing the right one. I got to make sure I share the right one. Sorry about that. So I have this as a handout. If you'd like the handout, actually, if you'd like the handout, I'll go put it on the marketplace. So it's an easy way for me to remember where to put it. Give me a little bit of time to get it out there, but it's an easy way for me to remember where I send the handouts. But here are the top 10 ways that federal buyers find sellers. And I teach this because it's important to understand when the federal buyers are looking for you, you got to figure out how to be where they're looking. And understanding how and where they look makes it easier for you to make sure you're there and your company is there when they're looking. So the first place that, and this is my list, which is a good list. It's based on talking to hundreds of contracting officers. So it's not me, and this is how I search your one contracting officer. Hundreds of them, averaging out how they do it and where they look. So the first place they look, if they have a brand new requirement that is something you can offer, right, or support, then they look into incumbents. They look at their incumbents, people who are already working in their agency, and go, hey, do we have a contract vehicle or somebody doing the work that we could just add this work to it? No. Do we have incumbents that we like? And we can just say, hey, do you want to bid on this? Maybe they're 8As and they just talk behind the scenes and direct awards happens. But they look to incumbents first. The second thing is they expand that out. They look to contract vehicle holders. An example is in the Navy, they have something called Seaport Next Gen. So they might look to that contract vehicle. In Department of Commerce, they've got a contract vehicle called ProTech Weather. And if they're looking to award a contract, NOAA might look there first and look at those, I don't know what it is, like 5 or 10 contract holders. Very small group of people, but big enough for them to be able to go out to. So that's the second place they look. By the way, that's why you want to ask anybody you're talking to, any federal buyer, when you're talking to them, what are the top 3 contract vehicles you tend to use, right? You can research this in FPDS, but you can also ask them when you're talking. Number 3, where they look, is RFP responses. And so if you have written a response to previous requirements that they had, they appreciate that. They've got you on a list of at least these people respond, right? And if you responded with a good proposal, but it just didn't win, that's even better. And so they'll look at their spreadsheet or however they track it and go, oh, well, let me reach out to these people and say, hey, would you be interested in engaging with us? And then number 4, RFI and sources sought. So now they're moving out to a formal process. The first 3 were kind of looking internally at what they have on their desk. Number 4, they're doing something formal by putting an RFI sources sought notice out, saying to industry, we have this requirement, come to us, talk to us if you're interested. I did put down personal favorites, and I actually should have moved that a little higher in the number, because they'll look at a personal favorite before they'll go out to sources sought. They can look in there and say, do we have people that we like, right? And I'm not here to debate this. This is human nature. If they have a whole bunch of capability statements from a lot of companies they have done capability briefings with, they might reach out to 5 or 10 of them and say, hey, why don't you guys come in and do a response or participate, right? They can choose how they do that. They can align it to a GSA contract and be fair about that. They're not doing anything wrong here, right? It's a normal way of doing business, but you want to track on being on that list. Personal favorites means you need to have reached out to them. You need to be knocking on doors and trying to get in and have meetings with your target agency, not with everybody, but with your target agency, so that you begin to get on their favorites list and you follow up with them on a regular basis. And that's how you begin to sink into their minds. I remember a contracting officer awarding a contract or bringing somebody in and awarding a contract to them who had been following up for 2 years. And the contracting officer is like, man, I really do want to find a place where you could fit and support our agency. And finally, there was a fit. But it was because they were following up every few weeks or once a month and staying on that contracting officer's mind. And that contracting officer was thinking that you are committed to our agency. You want to work with our agency. I want to find a spot where it makes sense for you to fit. That's all I mean by personal favorites. I don't mean anything underhanded that they do. It just means, people we know. That's why I say if they don't know who you are, then how can they ever buy from you? The next one, number 6, is agency vendor list. HHS, as an example, has a supplier portal. You need to be in there. If federal buyers from HHS are looking for people, they'll go there before they go to DSBS. That's the whole idea of that supplier portal. And many agencies have that. So be in the agency portals. You can go to our newsletter, and I've done step-by-step guides on how to get into HHS, how to get into the armies, the navies. Different agencies have registration portals. Number 7 on here is the Dynamic Small Business Search, or DSBS, tool that SBA runs. It's a combination of SAM and DSBS that comes together and creates this small business profile. When federal buyers are looking for small businesses, DSBS is the authoritative source of small businesses registered to sell to the government. This is where people can come in and see that they're 8A certified, HubZone certified, still small business eligible, all that kind of stuff. And so when you look at DSBS, you need to make sure you have a high visibility score. I don't know if I said this already, but I talked about the 100 Club. Get into GovCon in a Box and check your free score and see the free tips. I keep saying free so people understand we're not charging for this. We're making it available so that you're more visible. And the upside for us is we get to know what you sell and we can make introductions. Number 8, so this is one of my favorite ways to start getting me down to lower numbers, is responding to an RFI or a sources sought. So number 4, when I said RFI and sources sought responses, I didn't mean responding out. I meant people who have responded previously. And number 8 is about responding now. So they're looking for people who are responding now to my sources sought. Number 9 is they will reach out to the SBA district office. I have somebody down in Florida who she might even be on here. Nina had told me this story of how the SBA reached out because an agency reached out and said, hey, can you support us? They were looking for a firm. So you want to build a relationship with your SBA district office. And if it takes time to build it because maybe they're a little distant or aloof in the beginning, that's fine. The relationship's important to you, not them. They've got 100,000 people they're responsible for. You've got one district. And so take the time, even if it's a little frustrating, push through the frustration. And then PTAX, or now called Apex Accelerator, make sure you build a relationship with these counselors. They want you to succeed. They're there to help you succeed. I call them one of the 7 mentors, but agencies will look out to them. I'm working with somebody in Oklahoma who I just now remembered I have to follow back up with. But she is being contacted by agencies out there, like military installations, saying, hey, we want to engage more small businesses. Can you help us? Well, let me turn to the small businesses I'm engaged with who are in here. You want to be talking to these people. And so this is really important. You track on that. Okay, so let me stop screen sharing for a second and just kind of wrap this up with just the 3 things I want you to really remember. Federal buyers buy following a very well-defined process. I have a process roadmap that I'm going to put out there that'll show you. This particular one is USDA, but I have other agencies. And it shows USDA's roadmap, not my version of it, but it's theirs. They shared it out and it's perfect. And so I'll share that out as a handout. I'll put it on the marketplace. So if you're interested, go to govconinabox.com/marketplace. Give me a day to get it out there. Today's the 9th. So I'll try to commit to getting it done by Friday because I'm actually committing other people to do it. But go look at that roadmap. If you're in a different agency, go ask them, do you have a piece of paper that lays out your roadmap? What is the roadmap you follow? That way I can align my opportunities to that roadmap. The next thing is make sure you understand how that aligns to your sales activities and begin to try to get in there earlier. And then the last thing is when you think about how federal buyers buy stuff from small businesses, think about those 10 tips I just gave you on how they go looking for small businesses. And just ask yourself, how much am I covering down on each one of these? It's hard to be an incumbent until you win something, but it is not hard to get into DSBS and have a 100 score. So find that balance and make sure you're checking off each one of those 10 items about how federal buyers find you. That way you're increasing the ability for them to find you and the chances that you'll get invited to the party. All right, just remember as you head into the day, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training. And the next training, by the way, is around not being invisible. So I'll really dive into that. I'll see you next time.